Having previously reviewed the Citroen e-C4 and the e-C4X, I was curious to see how the updated models compared. Indeed, they have changed the exterior styling, added a larger battery pack, and more importantly, made it even more affordable. See, at the time of filming and in the UK, the e-C4 is available with the U trim, coming in at £26,000. That gives you a 50 kilowatt hour battery pack. If, however, you want the e-C4 or the e-C4X, both of them come in at the same price point with the Plus and Max trims. The Plus model gives you a 50 kilowatt hour battery pack at £27,000, and the Max model gives you a 54 kilowatt hour battery pack coming in at roughly £30,000. Now, in this review, you can see if the new vehicles are actually worth their price tags, and of course, how they compare with some of their modern competitors. So yes, indeed, there are two battery pack configurations available. Now, the 50 kilowatt hour model has got a range claim at roughly 200 to 220 miles, while the 54 kilowatt hour model goes up to 220 to 270 miles. Now, it's worth considering that none of the vehicles have got a heat pump installed as standard, and if that's something that you want, you have to splash out an initial £450, which is a little bit disappointing, specifically in this day and age. A heat pump, in case you're wondering, effectively adds to the overall efficiency when it comes to heating up the cabin in colder climate scenarios. Now, nonetheless, I'm driving the e-C4 with a 50 kilowatt hour battery pack, and from my own mixed driving test, I netted between 180 to 200 miles, while in the 54 kilowatt hour model, I netted 205 to 225 miles, which is pretty much bang on line with what I achieved in the other vehicles from the Stellantis group. And as you'll be able to see from the mileage leaderboard, the e-C4 or indeed the e-C4X, depending on which configuration you go for, do actually do a relatively decent job in comparison to some of its nearest competitors. Now, in order to be as efficient as possible, you might want to enable a degree of regenerative braking. And here there is a B mode that you can enable via the center console. Now, if I were to initiate it at 40 miles an hour and lift off from the accelerator pedal, the vehicle will start decelerating, albeit not completely to a standstill, because here the vehicle will continue rolling. Now, you can of course disable B mode if you so wish, and therefore if I were to go up to 40 miles an hour again and then lift off the accelerator pedal, the vehicle feels like it's coasting a little bit more. Now, I actually like driving in B mode, but I really wish that the manufacturer had incorporated a one pedal drive, because it would have made those inner city commutes a little less cumbersome. A lot of its competitors now incorporate the ability of customizing the regenerative braking feel on the fly using paddle shifters, or indeed have a full one pedal drive, and it would have been great to see it actually translated to the updated e-C4 and the e-C4X. Now, of course, you do also have the ability of plugging it in, and here via CCS port you can attain up to 100 kilowatts of input. So therefore, using a DC rapid charger like you'd find on the motorway, you can go from 20 to 80% in just half an hour. As for its Type 2 port, so for example, if you're going to be connecting up to a wall box at home, the 7.4 kilowatt onboard charger will allow you to go from 0 to 100% in 7 hours and 30 minutes. Now, you have also got the option of upgrading it to an 11 kilowatt onboard charger for an additional £300, and this will definitely speed up the time. As for a regular 3-pin input, it will take you over 24 hours. So moving swiftly on, we get onto driving comfort, and both the e-C4 and the e-C4X have Citroen's advanced comfort suspension with double hydraulic stops on the front and a single one at the rear. Now, the combination of this leads for a really comfortable experience, the best in its class for sure. Now, of course, it's not an adaptive suspension system, but rather more of a impressive and more of an advanced suspension system. But indeed, both these vehicles just feel like you're gliding over speed bumps or potholes or anomalies, and it just makes for the drive to be really pleasurable. Now, the downside of this is that the floaty-like suspension system doesn't fare well on the country road, so if you're going to be really chucking it around on winding routes, then you'll find quite a lot of body lean. It doesn't also have the best sort of one-to-one driver's input, even in terms of its sport mode preset. But in that sense, who really cares? Because if you're looking at this vehicle, you're likely going to be concentrating in terms of the overall driving comfort. And in this respect, this vehicle really does shine in comparison to a lot of its electric SUV counterparts. Now, aside from how it performs on challenging roads, what about when it comes to its straight line performance? Well, it's not exactly the most exhilarating vehicle, and indeed the e-C4 and the e-C4X don't really stand out in comparison to some rival all-electric vehicles. But with that said, it'll certainly suffice for the vast majority of consumers. Now, in the 50 kilowatt hour model, you've got 100 kilowatts of power, or 136 horsepower, and in the 54 kilowatt hour model, this moves over to 115 kilowatts of power, or 156 horsepower. Both models have got a torque claim of 260 Newton meters. Now, both models have also got a front wheel drive configuration only, at least at the time of filming and in the UK. Now, using RaceLogic's Performance Box Touch, I had the 50 kilowatt hour model tested from 0 to 20 miles an hour in 2.43 seconds, 0 to 30 miles an hour in 3.67 seconds, 0 to 60 miles an hour in 9.33 seconds, which is pretty much in line with the manufacturer's claim, and then 50 to 70 miles an hour in 5.63 seconds. I also recorded a peak acceleration of 0.38 G. As for its top speed, it's electronically limited to 93 miles an hour. So next up we get onto its interior design, and unfortunately over here not much has changed from the previous generation model. Indeed, it does look a little bit bland in this day and age, and has still got some harsh plastic that can be found towards the dashboard and the door trims. However, those people with a keen eye, you would have been able to notice that the Citroen badge has been updated on the steering wheel, so there's that. Now, speaking of which, over here you've got some physical buttons and dials and stalks, and you've also got a dedicated climate control menu that can be found towards the dashboard, which is very much appreciated in this day and age. So yes, Citroen has preserved them, and that makes it all that bit more practical. Speaking of which, over here you have got a 10-inch infotainment system, which is actually quite responsive and vivid, and it provides you a good degree of customization. Furthermore, it also supports Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which is certainly appreciated as it allows you to use some of your favorite apps. For example, the use of Google Maps or Waze, for example, when it comes to navigation. Now, as for the driver's display in the entry-level U trim in the e-C4, you've got a 5-inch instrument cluster. However, this moves over to a 7-inch size in the Plus and Max trims, and indeed that is present on the X models. Now, furthermore, in the top-spec Max model, you'll also find a pop-out head-up display, which is very much appreciated as it shows your traversing speed and the safety systems that are in operation. Although I kind of wish that the manufacturer had updated this kind of old-school pop-out design, because it just doesn't look that modern. But in this respect, I can't be overly complacent, because the fact that you have got a head-up display in the top spec trim is very much appreciated, as it allows you to keep your eyes planted on the road, unlike what you'd find on some rival alternatives that do away with every sort of display that can be found in front of you. And yes, Tesla and Volvo, I'm looking at you. Now, when it comes to its audio system, unfortunately over here, you've only got a 6-speaker configuration with audio drivers that are found within each of the 4 doors and some tweeters that are found within the A-pillars. They don't do too well across the sound frequency range, but will suffice for your day-to-day listening. Audiophiles, if you are interested in having a really punchy audio system, then you might want to look elsewhere. On the flip side, however, it's great to see that the e-C4 and the e-C4X have got a high-level acoustic insulation pack, and therefore means that the overall in-cabin noise is actually kept down to a minimum, providing you a bit more of a serene driving experience. Now, for you to get the utmost audio fidelity, you'll want to plug in your smartphone, of course, if you're using your phone for audio playback. And here there's a USB Type-C port and Type-A port at the front of the center console, and at the rear of the center console, a USB Type-A port, which is used for providing charge only. Now, this does actually bring me onto storage, and at the front of the center console you have got a small little open area which can be useful for placing a smartphone, and yes, it will accommodate larger size smartphones as well. It's also got a non-slip material which prevents your phone from flying backwards, for example when you're accelerating. Underneath over here you've then got a 2-part compartment, which can be used for concealing certain more valuable goods. Next to it, you've also got a 12-volt socket, which can be useful, for example, for plugging in a dash cam. Now, further down the center console, you have got 2 cup holders, and then you've got an area that is found underneath the center armrest. Elsewhere, you've also got the smart pad support. This is kind of the tablet adjustment that can be found towards the glove box. This is going to be present in the Plus and Max trims, and you will also have to buy an additional adapter if you do want to have a tablet placed over here. This is useful for extra entertainment, for example, for your passenger. Now, the glove box has not been optimized for right-hand drive vehicles, but nonetheless should certainly suffice. As for the door bins, they're relatively large at the front and therefore will accommodate a 500ml bottle with ease, while the rear two are unsurprisingly a little bit more limited. It is also worth mentioning that in the Max trim, you have got a rear armrest with 2 cup holders, and this is because the Max trim has got a integrated ski latch. This, funnily enough, brings me onto its boot capacity, and here you've got 380 litres to play around with, or 1,250 litres in the e-C4, which should certainly suffice for your weekly shops. If, however, you want a little bit of extra space, you might want to go for the X model, because here you've got 510 litres and 1,360 litres, therefore accommodating larger sized luggage with a little greater ease. Now, in terms of practicality, other than the Max model having a ski latch, all the vehicles have got a 60/40 rear split folding seats. They've also got an underfloor compartment which can be useful for your cables, but unfortunately you have not got a flat loading bay. Indeed, over here there's a small little step between the rear portion of the seats and also the floor. Nonetheless, it is still very practical to utilize because you have got a hatchback design. Now, what really does set aside the e-C4 and the e-C4X over most of its competitors is the seating comfort. And here it's because you've got the Citroen Advanced Comfort seats, which are really cushiony soft. And therefore, both at the front and rear of the cabin, you'll feel that you're being sat in luxury. And in reality over here, the seats themselves are among one of the softest out there that I've ever come across. And that's coming from someone who's reviewed over 130 different electrified vehicles. Now, with that said, it is disappointing that you have got manually adjustable seats only, and if you want heated front seats, you'll have to go for the Plus model, and if you want a heated steering wheel on top of that, you'll have to go for the Max model. Truthfully, I do think that these features should be included as standard across the entire trim range, but alas, that's not the case. Now, what I do like, however, is its overall refreshed exterior design, which some people will like and some people will dislike because it's got a bit more of a playful look to it. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Subjectively and in person, I do think that the e-C4 and the e-C4X really do look the part. At the front, you've got this really nice look with the badge and also the headlights, while at the side, you've got 18-inch alloys that come fitted as standard across the entire trim range, and at the rear, the tail lights don't look accentuated anymore, but rather have got a bit more of that blocky look, very much like fitting with the front of the vehicle. This kind of makes it stand out over the previous generation model and might turn certain heads. Now, in terms of your colours, there is a white finish as standard. If, however, you want a metallic black, grey or blue or green finish, it'll come in at £595. A premium metallic elixir red will set you back £720. Moving on from its exterior design, let's talk about safety. And here, the older generation model was tested by Euro NCAP in 2021 and scored 4 out of 5 stars. Here it was awarded 80% in adult occupancy, 83% in child occupancy, and just 63% in its safety assist scores. Not exactly the best sort of scores to go by, but I can only imagine that the later generation model that we have on review now does indeed score very similarly. Now, what I can really comment about and actually talk about are the driver assistance systems, because as standard you have got cruise control with speed limiter, speed limit information, lane departure assist, lane keeping assist, driver attention alert, and forward collision warning. If, however, you want to up the ante, you might want to go for the Max trim, because this incorporates active safety brake, extended traffic sign recognition, and adaptive cruise control with stop and go technology, which also has blind spot detection. Indeed, over here, the Max trim does give you a little bit of that extra bit of safety credentials on the road, and from my own test, I did actually find that the adaptive cruise control did actually work pretty well, while the blind spot detection does exactly what it says on the tin. Furthermore, you can also go for the Techno Pack in the top spec Max trim for an additional £500, and this will give you highway drive assist, which also integrates adaptive cruise control within it. This effectively gives you some steering support while on the motorway, and it's certainly something that you might want to consider, specifically if you do those longer journeys quite frequently. On that note, I would like to point out that it's actually pretty intuitive and easy to disable some of the driver assistance systems, because for those people who are not aware, a lot of new cars actually have to have them re-enable every single time you power them on. Thankfully over here, the manufacturer has thought about it, and therefore you've got a shortcut via the infotainment system to quickly disable them. Now to conclude, I would like to talk about parking and visibility. And first off, on the latter, at the front it's pretty decent, although due to the positioning of the rear view mirror, it can sometimes be hard to see the front of the vehicle. Of course, depending on how tall you are and your overall seating position. Nonetheless, in terms of the side view windows, is actually pretty large, and therefore it's very easy to manually check your blind spot. At the rear, however, it's quite limited due to the overall profile of the vehicle. Thankfully, you have got rear parking sensors that come fitted as standard, although I do think it's actually quite disappointing that if you do want a rear camera, you'll have to go for the Plus or Max trims. Speaking of which, in the top spec model, you can go for the Techno Pack, which will also add 360-degree cameras, which therefore gives you some extra peace of mind from curbing your rims. And here it is also worth mentioning that you have got a pretty tight 10.9 meter turning circle, therefore making maneuverability a breeze. So with all that in mind, it brings us on to our verdict of the new Citroen e-C4 and the e-C4X. And I really do love what the French manufacturer has done over here. They have updated the exterior styling while preserving the same sort of DNA of its predecessor, and also added a larger battery pack for those people who can afford it or indeed want that extra bit of range. All while also keeping the price down low and even bringing it even cheaper than what it was originally when I reviewed it, which makes this vehicle pretty much a fantastic outright recommendation for those people that want a compact SUV or even a slightly larger SUV if you go for the X model, all while having decent electric range, very nice interior design, and also, and more importantly, something that is supremely comfortable and class leading in its segment. As a result of this, both the e-C4 and the e-C4X get our Best Buy award. Now, we'd be curious to know what you make of the vehicles down in the comment section below, and if you would pick them over some rival alternatives. If you have enjoyed this detailed independent review, definitely do consider dropping a like, subscribing and hitting that bell notification, all of which would be greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Chris from TotallyEV, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.